All right, welcome back. In case you're just joining us, it's the Friday edition of the program, Moneyline with Nancy. You know, this is your one-stop shop for business, finance, economy, markets, as well as investment information. Joining me right now is my guest, Kalu Ukoha, who is an energy analyst. It's been a while, Mr. Ukoha. It's been a while I've seen you. I think I should put it like that. Yeah. Welcome. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me again.
How are you doing today?
I'm fine, Noreen. Are you?
I'm well. I'm good. I'm good. Right. Could be better.
It also could be better.
All right, let's get started. The electricity sector. We're just talking during the break, in fact, that where should we even start from?
It's a tough one. I mean, there's no right place to start. I mean, if you look at the figures in the last, I was here in the last, earlier this year, when we were talking about the power sector, and I said that the first 2 quarters we're just going to be flat because of elections, and that we'll start seeing movement towards the 3rd quarter. And then sometime in June, you saw the ministry release some directives, which was good in a way to show that at least the ministry was still alive to its responsibilities for policy, but there was still some, conflicting issues. Ministry sounding like the big boss of NEC. The whole idea of having a regulator is to have some level of independence, but it looked like the ministry was issuing directives to NEC, and then we just have the Siemens agreement, and then you start to wonder, where is the World Bank's power sector
guarantee
recovery program? And so there are a whole lot of things, but if you look at power generation has not improved. I mean, from 4,000, we're hearing 3,000, 2009. So the figures are not...
Or is it that the generation, because they said we have more capacity to generate, but what we are transmitting is where, what we're distributing is where the issues are, because at least in the last few months or so, we've been hovering around 4,000, in fact 3,000 to 5,000 megawatts, let me put it that way.
But that's where we've been since last year, or 2 years ago. So we've always had generation capacity in excess of 12,000. But because of different issues, transmission, distribution, water management issues, gas issues, we're still hovering around 4,000, which is very, very worrisome. And so when you see some of these conflicting directives that are coming in, for an investor, it starts to get worried. To me, I thought that the World Bank's power sector recovery program was very clear as to interventions that needed to be taken by federal government and other players, including the tariff adjustments. But now we have the Siemens, and you have some of the directives coming from the ministry, so you don't really know exactly. For an investor, it's confused, like who is in charge of the sector, what's the way forward, who says that next week some other directive is not going to come out.
So you're thinking they are not working together? Is that what you're saying, that perhaps there's no synergy amongst power stakeholders? So
I'm of the opinion that, and I keep saying it, that the fundamentals are still not right. Okay. So if the foundation of the building is not right, even if you try to put additional story buildings on it, it's not going to stand. The fundamentals are not right. So if you're not able to recover monies for 1,000 megawatt, there's no reason to be adding 20,000 megawatt, because you're still going to have the same problem. We have a sector that is still struggling for financial viability. And until we sort that problem out, whether we're trying to get 20,000, additional 40,000 megawatt, we're just going to be having shortfalls down the line. There are critical issues that need to be dealt with. Tariff, for example. It's a very tough decision, but one that has to be taken. Is the tariff right now? In the World Bank's program, tariff setting was a very key component that was going to, if you will, jumpstart the sector. And right now you're saying back and forth, is there going to be a review? And NEC comes out and says
it's not been approved
yet. It's not been approved. And that's just backlog. The review is just the backlog of the minor reviews that should have happened over the last few years. So we're not even talking about the major tariff adjustments that are supposed to be done every 5 years. And so we need to get our acts together and begin to work in a very coordinated fashion across the sector so that we can give confidence to investment. After all, that's the reason why we privatize in the first place. We say government is not good in doing business. Let's get out and give private sector. I mean, and private sector funding only likes to see a lot of certainty. But what we're saying here, there's not a lot of comfort. I mean, on one hand, if the price of a product is not right, you're going to struggle anyhow. And so the price has to be right.
Now, you talked about the fundamentals not right. I would like you to expatiate on what you mean, because when we're talking of power sector, it's just a whole gamut of issues, and it's perhaps also very technical, especially for those perhaps that are not in the sector or do not understand the sector, or for even average Nigerians that would even ask, why can't I even have light? Just like they say, why can't I just have light in my house? So what are the issues that are wrong with the sector fundamentally, just like you?
So the power sector is a chain. There's a value chain. So for you to have power in your homes and offices, it has to start from generation. Transmission, distribution to your homes. And the distribution company is the direct interface to customers.
Which are the discos.
Which are the discos.
Yeah.
So the disco is responsible for giving you power, and then you pay for the power. And the disco has to transmit that revenue across the value chain. So the tariff is supposed to be the only source of revenue for the entire value chain.
Yes. Yeah,
so when a distribution company and transmission company, they are giving the disco power to give the customer, the disco in turn has to take the money from the customers and pass it through the value chain. And so if a disco takes 1 naira of power and collects only 20 naira, and takes only 20 kobo from the 1 naira, then the whole entire value chain is going to suffer. And that's where we are right now. So the price is not right, the collections are very poor, and the discos are supposed to be the cash cow of the sector. Now, we all agree that the discos have issues, whether it's in their financial structure or their management makeup or their capabilities. If we don't sort out discos, we are not going to solve the power problem in Nigeria. And so no matter how much generation you do, no matter how much transmission you do, the direct interface to the customers is the distribution company. And we know a whole lot of issues. So price is one, the financial structure. Discos can't even borrow money because of the way their balance sheets are. Not talk about capabilities. A lot of people said these people just bought these firms without any knowledge about what power business was all about. And so remember that federal government has 40% shares in this.
Up till now.
So we need to restructure the distribution companies and set them on the right path.
Restructure how? Should the government take out its hand at this point totally? Because the government is even the one supporting the sector, so to speak. Because the government, if we're talking about the monies that discos or they've given to the sector in the last, I think since after the 2005 Power Sector Reforms Act and all of that, you have, I know during the Sanusi era as governor of the central bank, 213 billion. There's over 700 billion, I think, in the last few months or so. There's a 600 and something billion hanging, So, and you see all of this. But even the discos, I was speaking with some of the disco stakeholders some months ago, a forum I'm part of, and, I try to also hear what their issues are. They were also telling me that, that there is even a shortfall of over 1.3 trillion naira. So how should they now be organized? I've asked you 2 questions. How should the discos be organized? And number 2, should the government really now take off its hands from the power sector, perhaps?
So part of the reason why we don't have power is because the infrastructure is very weak. The infrastructure, meaning the transformers, the lines.
The physical infrastructure.
Yeah, the infrastructure to deliver the power is very weak. And so reliability is very poor. And the common sense of how to do it is to just fix the infrastructure. It rains for 2 hours in Abuja and there's no power for the next 24 hours because the infrastructure is so poor. I mean, we're in 2019, it shouldn't be happening. Now, you need money to invest to upgrade those infrastructure. Now, that's where the challenge is for the distribution companies. They have to be able to raise money to upgrade their infrastructure so that reliability can improve. Now, how do you raise money? If you want to go to the bank to raise money, the bank is going to say, show me your future cash flow. Future cash flow would include your tariff.
Tariffs.
If your tariff is not cost reflective and does not give me the incentive, never minding their heavy gearing. You remember they borrowed to even buy these discos, so their books are already loaded. And so discos there needs to be a financial reengineering of the structure of the discos. And some people have argued that we need to bring in new equity, new shareholding, so that you get fresh capital for because clearly, I mean, and what was clearly specified in the World Bank's program that the regulator was supposed to ask for a performance improvement plan, 5-year performance improvement plan to say, in the next 5 years, this is how I intend to improve my network, which will cost X amount. Because remember, you have to feed in that requirement into the tariff. The tariff is the only way you recover your money. And so you can borrow money to enhance the network, but you have to recover the money from the tariff. And so if the tariff is not right, which takes us back to tariff, tariffing is so central. And the issues, I mean, I understand the issues of the political backlash. Why should we pay for something we don't have now? What's the right time for the tariff and all that? But the truth of the matter is that the price has to be right. If the price of tomato is not right, the farmer is not going to produce tomato.
So you're in support of a tariff increase?
It's not a matter of support. We're looking for
the business case.
We're looking for we're looking for commercial viability of the sector. If we want the sector to be viable, for investments to flow in, then the price has to be right.
Now, with this about 45% increase in tariff that's been mulled, though the NEC says we've not approved yet, you know, since it got these backlashes and all of that, is that a step in the right direction? Because if we take a look at,
it's coming. I mean, even the review we're talking about is originally when the tariff was announced in 2015, we're supposed to have minor reviews every 6 months to take care of inflation and FX fluctuations, and we have major tariff review every 5 years. Now, since then, there's been no tariff review, even the minor and the major. So even this one that we are saying is just the cumulative of the minor reviews over the last few years. And so I've not really looked at the workability, whether it's the right one or other, but that conversation as to whether the tariff is cost reflective or not is very critical and needs to be done. So I think you need to fix the price right before regulation can actually, put a teeth to trying to get discos to do the right thing.
Because if we're looking at, we have the table right now on the screen. I don't know if you can see it from here, but like for Abuja Disco, current tariff, 24 Naira, 30 kobo per kilowatt hour. The new tariff, proposed new tariff, about 31.96. That's a 7 Naira 66, 7.66 difference. That's 7 Naira 66 kobo difference. For those of you watching, of course, you can see where you fall. Abuja, Enugu, Kano, Ibadan, Eko, Benin, Kaduna, Jos, Ikeja, Port Harcourt, Yola. And of course, let me also tell our viewers, there's nothing like NEPA again, because it seems it hasn't really left our consciousness.
We're still talking.
Yes, we're still talking. Yes, NEPA. Once they take your light, you'll be like, NEPA has taken the light. Or, Yoruba, NEPA timunolo, NEPA we go in Igbo and all of that. There's nothing like NEPA and there's nothing like PHCN anymore, isn't it? So it depends on where you are. You fall into a certain disco. So that's the table there on the screen. So what you're saying essentially is that electricity is a commodity.
And we need to agree in Nigeria if it's a social service or it's a commodity. If we want to have it, and there's also a tension between affordability and availability, and each one drags the other one. And for me, I'm not really very much worried about the increases, but at the back of this should be a service level agreement. You can't just increase my tariff without any form of certainty as to how much I'm going to have power. For example, if I take my jerrycan and go to the filling station and buy 50 liters, when I start my generator, I know my generator is going to be on for 6 hours or 8 hours. So I have that assurance. Now, if you increase my tariff, I need to have a service level agreement to say, okay, your tariff has gone up, but I can assure you of 8 hours a day or between this time and that time, and it's not coming. And so people just feel, you're increasing power for the same or less. I mean, it doesn't sound very fair. So I think that coming at the back of this, the regulator should also get the distribution companies to have some form of service level agreement with their customers to say, but again, the distribution companies will say, we are only distributing what we get. The day we get, Abuja gets about 11% of what the nation produces. So the day it falls to 2,500, they're only going to get 250 megawatts. And so they're going to load shed. So even if I promise to give you power, I don't generate power. So, but the ministry has said, willing seller, willing buyer. Maybe Abuja Disco should now start looking for generation from anywhere. All they want to do is to satisfy their customers. And so I want to see more certainty in our regulation and our sector governance. So the ministry is good that the Ministry of Power has been yanked out of the tripod. And so you probably want to see more focus on the policy side and see the regulator step up and come up with some very creative and innovative ways. Because I mean, somebody was saying the other day that the discos are smarter than the regulator, and so they're always trying to find smarter ways to get around some of the regulations that they're coming in. So you would expect that the regulator would have to step up. Isn't
it even a problem that perhaps the players in certain sectors are always smarter than the regulators?
Well, because the players are private sector. Because the players are private sector, they can employ the best brains in the sector, while government can barely do with, cannot compete in terms of manpower. So they just go through the laws, find the way to go around the regulations and laws without breaking it. And so if you watch in the banking sector, for example, until you started bringing bankers to run CBN, and so they all know where the skeletons are buried, and on the one they just say, check here, check here, check here. Maybe we need to start looking at that in the electricity sector. I mean, if you brought an MD of a disco to come and run NEC, I mean, discos cannot play pranks because he knows how they used to do it.
But the chairman of NEC now is also a seasoned person, so to speak, Professor John.
Yeah, in his own right, yes.
Yes, in his own right. All right, let's quickly take a break, and when we come back, the program continues. Kalu Ukoha is still with me. We're talking about power. In case you also want to join the conversation, please feel free. You can buzz me on Twitter at Nancy. You can also buzz us on Twitter, Moneyline AIT. On Facebook, find us there, Moneyline with Nancy. We're also streaming live right now on Twitter in case you are upwardly mobile. Watch us on your mobile phones. We'll be right back.
Nigeria is set to host the largest gathering of think tanks, industry players, CEOs, and policy makers from Africa. African Economic Congress 2019, building the Africa we want. The Congress will feature over 30 thematic breakout sessions, African-European Business Roundtable, African Startup Challenge, high-level networking, and master classes. Date is 4th to 6th November 2019 at the prestigious Sheikh Musa Yaradua Center, Abuja, Nigeria.
For registration, sponsorship, and exhibition opportunities, please visit www.aecongress.org.
Join us as we reposition Africa for prosperous trade and investments. African Economic Congress 2019, building the Africa we want.
Okay, we're back. Kalu was just talking with me during the program. Kalu Ukoha, an energy analyst, is still with me here. We're looking at the power sector. Now, let's quickly take a look at this issue. Do you think that Nigerian consumers, Nigerian electricity consumers, are difficult to deal with? That perhaps the Nigerian consumers, when it comes to electricity, are recalcitrant in terms of paying a rise in electricity tariffs?
No, I think that the Nigerian consumer is just the same, is typical of any country or any environment. I mean, so it's the same Nigerian consumer who pays for electricity, that pays for fuel, that pays for his mobile phone. And we don't have issues of Nigerians not paying for their mobile phone, or when they go to the filling station to buy fuel. At the end of the day, the meter says 6,000, they pay 6,000.
That's pay as you go.
Pay as you go. So I think that one of the major issues is metering. Somebody wants to have a sense of how much he's consuming, and then he would like to pay. Although there are issues of bypass, energy theft.
Yes, I was
that is
coming to
not
that
just
too.
common to Nigeria. I mean, across Africa, you find some of those, although maybe not at the level that we have in Nigeria. But I think that, and that's where we're saying these schools have to come up with some very innovative ways of trying to assure their revenue over time. But I think that the Nigerian consumer is just typical of any other consumer anyway.
President Buhari in Japan has invited Japanese investors into the power sector. Would this be a boost? Would this be a lift to the sector?
I mean, you know, businessmen don't listen to some of those things. They know more. They know more. They know more about our country than some of these nice words that we paint. And so you also look at Nigeria not in isolation. You look at Nigeria in the African setting after it's been signed.
Yeah.
I mean, the implications of that is that foreign investments are looking at where in Africa can we site or can our investments go? If they're going to be free movement of goods and persons. So I don't need to have my factory in Nigeria to have my products here. And so they're looking at, apart from electricity, ease of doing business, your tax regimes, repatriation, things like that. And you know, in my recent deliberations around East Africa, a lot of things are happening. I mean, East African countries are stepping up, looking at the long game, and I hope Nigeria we're up to it, because
What is East Africa doing that Nigeria is not doing? Because you traveled, you just came back.
So, if you take Rwanda, for example,
Yeah.
you go in by 9 a.m. into a building, and by 1 p.m., you come out with your certificate of registration,
yes,
you
in a
come
few
out
hours.
with your tax,
Yes.
you come out with your bank account,
Same
you're
day.
ready to do business.
Yes.
Now, okay, so if you bring that to the Nigerian, this thing, only to check for name, I mean, like, can I use this name? It takes a whole lot of time. That's one. Inflows, your tax regimes, repatriation of your profits, other fiscal incentives. How are we competitive? Because at the end of the day, it's going to depend on how competitive you are. Now, we have the population, but then if there's going to be free movement of goods and services, then that means your population can get the goods and the factory doesn't need to be here. And so, and electricity is just one of them. In East Africa, in some of the countries, they're beginning to have excess supply. They're looking for who to take
to
demand.
send it to.
And here we have 200 million people, and we have 4,000 megawatts. And so we're not even looking at productive power. The industries that we are trying to attract, how are they going to generate their own power? I mean, you go to smaller countries, smaller poor countries like Uganda, for example. You see industrial customers who pay monthly bill of $1 million a month connected to the mains. Now, all the big industries in Nigeria generate their own power. And so we just have barely, domestic consumers. And that is why tariffing is such a big deal. And so we need to start to look at how do we increase productive power that is used for industries to add value, and then, because they're willing to pay. Diesel, for example, you probably be shocked to know that diesel, I mean, if you try to calculate it, it'll probably come to about 60 to 70 naira per kilowatt hour. And we're still talking about tariff of 30 and 40. And so if there is some service level agreement, like, I'm going to increase your tariff, but I'm going to guarantee you 24/7, I'm sure the industries would come back. But reliability is a very strong issue. And people who have manufacturing lines don't want to reach their manufacturing lines because of lack of reliability. So they prefer to generate their own power where they have control over.
Now let's talk about the power ministers. I know that it's a main minister. There is also a power minister of state, Minister Maman and Mr. Jedi Agba, I guess. I know we'll have to start getting used to these ministers' names because there are a lot of them, What do you think should be the initial task? Because even when Babatunde Raji Fashola was there, he was also being criticized a lot. And the president was criticized. How can you bring a lawyer to run the power sector with works and housing. Now the president has given him works and housing, left power for these two gentlemen. You know, who perhaps we also think will begin to also get knowledge, not just also knowledge, the right knowledge, because it's also very key that as a government person from the government side, you actually know what that industry is all about. Just like you said, that you have the players being smarter than even the regulators and even government itself. What do you think? What are the tasks before these men?
I think, apart from what I read about them, I really don't know much about them. But like somebody was saying that good thing now the Minister of Power is an engineer, and somebody was just laughing like the power problem is not an engineering problem. It's a leadership and governance issue. There are human, there are commercial issues. We just need to find the way to sort out the problems. And so it's good that power has been carved out of the Power Works and Housing, and so power is on its own and has another Minister of State for it. But I think that the sector needs to, first of all, agree on what the strategic priorities are. I mean, 3, 4, 5 issues that are topmost with the power sector, and find a coordinated sector-wide plan for it. So you don't be having plans here and there. Sector-wide plan, 5-year plan, this is how we want to take Nigeria's power sector from A to B. And then, because we're never short of strategy. We're never short of strategy. Our problem is always how to execute. Execution has always been our Achilles tendon. And so we need to, first of all, get the strategy right, but more importantly, follow it through. Follow it through. I mean, when the last minister was here, he talked about incremental power and all that. But they also made a mistake, because when a new regime comes in, the tendency to think that people that were there didn't know what they were doing. You halt it. It started from when Yar'Adua came, he stopped the Obasanjo's power sector reform. After some time, he started. When Jonathan left, when this regime came, they first felt that they were not doing it right. 1-2 years will pass before they continue. So continuity is actually key. So I expect that this new team, when they come in, instead of trying to stop what the previous regime had done, try to follow through and see how you can tweak it as we go. But we don't have time. Time is not on our side again. I mean, 4,000 megawatt. It's very poor.
You can't even find words anymore.
It's very poor.
Well, talking of immediate tasks, the first task that should be on the table of the ministers, what do you think it should be?
I think that
I know you said they should look at all this, but what do you think should be number one?
I think that the minister should try to align the value chain. And what I mean by, so if we have a pot of funds, what's the best way to use it? Now, like you said, we have generation capacity of 13,000. Transmission claims now that we can do 7,000. We've not tested it. We need to test it. So assuming we have transmission capability of 7,000, how can we get distribution to distribute 7,000 megawatt? I think that's where they should concentrate right now. If we're able to push 7,000 megawatt to consumers consistently for 6 months to 1 year, you will see the ripple effect in the economy. And then we can start to talk about the other issues. But you can't solve that problem if we don't deal with the issues of the market shortfall, the tariff. There is a decision to be taken, and leadership is needed here. That tariff has to be adjusted.
So we must have cost-reflective tariffs.
Or we change the model that we're trying to build. The model we're building now is that the tariff is going to pay the value chain. And so because the cost reflective is that it's going to pay all these costs and add a little for as profit. And so if the cost is not reflective, then there's no way we can go.
I think the issues, the sector has a lot of issues because, and you also have a lot, I think a few regulators in the sector. There's also the NEMSA part of the electricity management service also that is in charge of, I think
electrical installations,
transformers and all of that, talks about even the safety of the power industry. That is an issue on its own. But let's see if we have comments on Twitter to take. Okay. Justice on Twitter says, your guest has spoken well in almost all angles. However, there should be a long-term recovery on investment. The discos want to get their investment now and cut the throat of consumers, which is not good. That is why they want to increase tariffs. That's coming from Justice. All right, as we even round up the show, what are your final remarks? You know, this administration has just a few years to go, and perhaps if this administration can also get the power sector right, that would be a check for Mr. President when he's leaving, to say, okay, this is one of my legacy. I was able to, you know, deliver.
But what is getting the power sector right? I mean, we have to define what success means. And so what is success? What will success look like in the next 3 years? Success
to me looks like that I have 24-hour power supply.
You can have it in 3 years.
Okay.
And again, I can tell you why. If you look at some more African countries that are smaller and they have maybe 1 or 2 cities, they concentrate on some of the productive areas. And so you see Accra or places say they have, but we're trying to treat Lagos like my village.
But that does not mean my village people shouldn't have land.
No, I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
But you see, the issue is, so because we're trying to spread power evenly across, so it's going to be just be incremental, and you're not going to have 24/7.
Perhaps that's why we should also have off-grid and mini-grid.
Absolutely.
Encourage off-grid and mini-grid. Okay, I think that's the much we can take on today's edition of the program. I've been speaking with Kalu Ukoha, who is an energy analyst who've been looking at the issues around power. He's given an agenda before the 2 ministers, Minister Marman and Minister Jedi.